Good evening, gentlemen. We are on the eve of Halloween and another important day in church history. What is it?
Oh, it's not Christmas already. Did I miss Christmas?
That's not Christmas.
Oh,
No,
good, good.
It's All Saints Day.
no, that's well, no, that well, I guess that's the Halloween thing. That kind of one and the same.
Well, it's All Saints Eve, I should say.
Okay. Tomorrow is also the anniversary of the Reformation.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it didn't make it on my radar screen.
But Joe, you and I aren't that old.
Yeah, we'd all be Catholics were it not for that day.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go first. I know because I didn't get my topic in last week.
Oh, you get two topics today, Jim.
I do.
Yeah, I mean, because we
Okay.
cut you out pretty good last time.
Doesn't matter. To be honest, guys, I forget what I was going to talk about, but I've got stuff to talk about. Okay, so first one is this: um, what is the importance of church attendance? I mean, or said another way, why should we attend church? You probably have people you know that they say, "Look, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, but I don't attend church. I worship God in my own way." So why should or should not we go to church?
I don't
Go
think
ahead,
I
Joe.
have to go to church. I don't have to go to church. I'm good all by myself. I don't have to worry about people that I don't like and try to be nice to people. And I can wear my jammies.
All right, Joe. Smile after you say that.
I'm serious.
You're not.
I don't have anything else to say. I enjoy going to church. I look forward to it on Sunday. I get to see all my friends and I get to I don't know, just that to me it's always been a milestone in my week going to church. I can't imagine people that don't want to go to church, and maybe there is a reason, but as long as I'm willing and able, I'm going to drag myself to church and I'm going to enjoy the service. I'm going to enjoy worship, corporate worship, and I really look forward to your class, even though sometimes I don't pay attention, Jim.
Yeah, I know. I'm well aware.
Okay.
Barry, why should we go to church or shouldn't we?
Well, usually a preacher's going to take you to Hebrews where it says, "Do not forsake the assembling of ourselves together."
Mhm.
So you can use that as a biblical reference. I think the issue becomes when people look to themselves and say, "I don't need it," or "I don't like it," or whatever their excuse is. That's a selfish reason
Mm.
that they're looking at. They're not looking at the bigger picture. Whenever you attend church, there's a lot of different things that happen. Number one, you're making a commitment to a local New Testament body. Okay,
Mhm.
that becomes your family.
Mhm.
You get support from that family. You can support others in that family. So it's not just an inward thing; it's an outward thing. And you'd be surprised how much maybe just walking in and greeting someone and say, "How's your week going?" And
Mm.
maybe they had a bad week, and now you're a shoulder that they can start crying on, or you're sharing and say, "You know what, this was a tough week," and they can share some things. Now you've got something to pray for the next week. So a lot of things can happen by coming together, and I really believe that God has created us to be relational.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Mary and I during COVID, because of her health, we didn't get out much. We watched a lot of church on TV. I'm sorry, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
But Barry, some people, for the first time in their lives, they got to watch TV, streaming worship services, and actually all of the church services during that time. And some of them liked it so much that they never came back to church. And I know that once in a while it's mentioned from the pulpit that a lot of people decided to stay home and worship at home. So not everybody struggled through that period. Some of them actually got to like it. I relate that to when during that period of time, individuals that weren't essential at my job, they started working at home, and some of them never came back, and they're okay with it. So I don't know what to think of it. I think it has a lot to do with also the individual's personality.
Yeah, but Joe, doesn't that go back to what I said, where that's an inward approach? I like it, so I'll do this. It's not thinking about my impact and my possibility of maybe ministering to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've I've been pretty free with even people that I think I insulted a couple of times. If your church is on a screen, you don't have a church. You're watching a church is what you're doing. And well, it'd be hard to argue that you can't worship God from home. It'd be very hard to say that you are actually participating in a local church from home. The fact that you show up, excuse me, the fact that you show up, I think encourages everybody. What would it be like if one day you went to church on Sunday morning and you were the only person there? You might start thinking, wow, am I the only person who believes this stuff? Whereas when you show up and the normal amount of people show up, whether it's a few or a lot, it's encouraging to you. These are my brothers and sisters. We believe the same things. From as a biblical case, I think we could say probably two things, and that is the early church met together on Sunday every week, so they kind of set the tone for that. And then if we weren't to be gathered together as a church, what's the purpose of in Ephesians 4, God given us evangelists, apostles, and pastors and teachers? What's the purpose for giving pastors to us if there's no shepherd?
It looks like you're defining beyond the church a community, a Christian community at that point. Yeah. And that's
yes.
how we are to live.
Yep.
Just thought.
I view my friends at church really as my family. I have a little bit of family here, but they're I see my church family more than my family.
Yeah.
I've run over a lot of people, too many people over the years who want nothing to do with the gathering of believers. Okay. Whether you want to call it the church or the fellowship or whatever you want to label that. They don't want anything to do with it. Yeah, yes, you can worship God at home. You can worship God by yourself. You can worship him out in the woods up against a tree. You can worship God anywhere. But there's something different that God calls us together to minister to one another and to grow. And as it says, iron sharpens iron, and we need to spend time together for that to happen. But over the years, I've run into a lot of people who want nothing to do with the church, the group, the family of believers, until they have a need, a death, or a funeral, or a financial need, or somebody's sick, and then suddenly they want the church to bend over backwards to help them out, even though they never were a part of helping others, and they never in any way supported the ministry that is there. They just wanted to be there all the time at their beck and call, without putting anything into it. It's like me going to the ATM machine without ever putting money in the bank and putting my card in there and punching my digits and expecting money to come out. I just don't think that's a logical way to approach it.
How should the church respond in those kind of situations?
My opinion, you never say no, because it's an opportunity to minister to someone. And I never turn down opportunities for ministry. Okay. Yeah. But I think there's also can be a learning point at that. If you want to withdraw some money, you need to put some money in too.
Yeah. But isn't worshiping the God corporate, or God corporately, or maybe together, isn't that a commandment as well? But does it have to be done together, or does it, individually? I guess that's just as good, right? I guess what I'm thinking is, it's not that we're really not that we're disobeying God if we choose not to assemble.
Well,
Well,
but
the classic text Barry already referenced, I'm calling it up. It's verse 22, I believe. Of course, I got the ESV. I'm looking for the word forsake not. Let us draw near with a true heart. Oh, here it is. Not neglecting to meet together. This is the ESV. Not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. The day there, I believe, is specifically referring to Christ's return.
Yeah. Can I add something else? I was just thinking we used to have Sunday evening services, and that has kind of like not, I guess for whatever reason, that's not the norm anymore in most churches. But I remember going to Sunday evening services, and they were a lot less formal. They were very informal, where there was a lot of more interaction during the service and all that. And a big part of it, and maybe this is just in the assemblies and the Pentecostal circles, but we used to always have a time of testimony where people would encourage one another by, first of all, sharing their struggles, and then also sharing what God had done for them, or where their faith was, that they're still waiting for God, to bless in a situation. And it was so encouraging to hear that, because some individuals, health issues, financial issues, deaths in the family. It's just amazing how when they share how God worked in their lives, so encouraging and so powerful, because that's when we see God at work within the church. We don't do that anymore. But how can you possibly do that if you don't assemble together?
For the first 25 years, Joe, of my Christian life, I was part of churches. We did meet on Sunday nights. It was less formal, lots of testimonies. But for some reason, around the year 2000, it seems like most churches stopped doing it. So Barry, you were still pastoring then. What did your church do?
well, we had a formal service like you would expect on a Sunday morning. Okay, Sunday night was totally different. That's when our youth class met, and our kids would have their ministries, and I would meet with the adults, and usually it was anywhere 10, 15 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a lot less formal. It was we didn't sing much. We just it was more like a Bible study. It was question and answer, so everybody could participate. You didn't sit and listen for an hour. Okay, you participated, and everybody, kind of like what we do here in our Men on Narrow Road. Everybody had a chance to talk. Everybody had to say, "This is what God is saying to me." And oftentimes we would just start reading some scripture and say, "What do you think?" So it was a lot less formal. And I suspect that it's more like what the early church was, a biblical church. They were met in smaller groups, and people were able to talk. Remember, they met in homes. Homes those days, if you got 10 to 15 people in a room, that was pretty good room. All right. So those houses weren't that big. So I think it was more like a small church in biblical times, where people could talk to one another and talk about the scriptures and talk about things going on in their lives. And I think sometimes our bigger churches kind of lose that.
Yeah, Jackie and I got to be part of a house church for probably 12 to 18 months back in, I'm going to say, the 80s, sometime in the 80s. We were between churches, and I was with a group of people. We were actually talking about maybe starting our own church. But we met in, it was probably kids and everybody, probably 15 to 18 people. Very informal, got to know each other really well. And it was a good experience. I don't know if I'd want to do it permanently, but it was a good experience.
No, when you look at churches, you can't say, well, this is better than that. Small churches might reach some people. Large churches might reach other people that a small church won't reach. Having pastored a relatively small church, there are some things that large churches can do that we could never dream of even attempting, because we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the personnel, we just didn't have the the facilities to host something like that. So I think both have their place in our society today, and both can reach different segments of our society. Some people like to go and see the big fancies. Other people want to go and have that closeness, that more family atmosphere. In a big church, you can go there for years, and other than if you sit the same spot, you might know 10 people around you, and that's it.
You have to find ways. I mean, Joe, I think, can testify to this as well. You have to find ways to make a big church small.
Yeah.
Joining a small group, joining a class, singing in the choir, things like that. You can make it small and have a similar experience.
Yeah. I've dealt with people over the years where you try to get them more involved. Like I say, our church was 60 to 80 people on Sunday, and we had people who would show up 5 minutes before the service starts, and they're the first one out the door when it's over. They don't talk to anybody, they don't socialize with anybody, and they might be regular, but they're really not part of the family other than taking up a space.
Mm-hmm.
So talking to those people, try to get them more involved, whether you want to call it a small group or something at home, some kind of ministry, or involved in an outreach ministry. Oftentimes they say, well, it's just not for me. And I say, why not? Well, I just don't feel like I need that. Well, again, that's looking inward, not outward.
Others to you. Yep.
Yeah. And I've had people say, well, I don't need that. And I say, well, if you're that spiritual and you're that far ahead in your understanding of who God is in your relationship, then we can use you as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but I've been doing this for a while, and I still need fed. I still need somebody above me teaching me. And I love it when I'm not the teacher. Yeah. And someone can feed me, because I need that. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and this is just a personal thought from me, if you don't like getting together, brothers and sisters in Christ, you're not going to enjoy heaven very much.
No, you won't. The beauty of a big church, you can slip in and slip out unnoticed, and it's easy. It's easy because it's like if you leave early if the attendance is 80 people, people are going to notice.
Yeah.
And if you're not there, people are going to notice. In a big church, maybe a few people will notice.
Yeah. I wonder how many people who watch church even regularly on Sunday morning, how many people contribute to that ministry?
I don't know.
I would assure you that's probably a pretty low number.
If they're contributing, it's financial.
Okay. Yeah. But that's better than nothing. But I would suspect a lot of people say, I just watch on TV. I don't have to give anything.
Yeah, I think it's wrong. That's wrong-headed, I think.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm over my time. Who wants to go number 2?
Go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to add something to Jim's, and then I'll get off the subject. I miss the small church for a lot of good reasons. Like especially now, you made me reminisce back on how important the whole part of hearing testimonies on Sunday night. But maybe I miss more of the Sunday night service than the small church, because the small church has also other issues. They bicker sometimes, and they get insulted if they don't get elected for a 3-year term as a deacon, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on in small churches. But the reality is that there's also a lot of good stuff. So I think I agree with both of you. There's pluses and minuses to both. So
yeah, there certainly are. I mean, small churches can't do a Christmas Wonderland like CLA does.
No,
they won't have the resources, the people, or the finances.
Right. Yeah.
Pluses and minuses.
Yeah, it's hard to attract outsiders into a small church because they feel like they're barging into a family dinner. Sometimes, that's the whole attitude.
And they might get swarmed when they come in.
Yeah, it's like, wow, we have a visitor. And I'm guilty of that. When there's somebody new, like we went to a church of about 300 in Parkersburg, and when somebody came in, that wasn't everybody needed to know who they were, what they did for a living, and it was almost like a reception time, before service started. But that's people get excited. So, all right, I guess it's my turn. I always bring things that help me because I see both of you as two very large databases of information when it comes to understanding and helping me with scripture, some of the challenges. And I have a lot of challenges. And today I bring to you the year of Jubilee. And this is something that I don't quite understand because of, if you read it through Isaiah, I think it's 61:2, and Leviticus chapter 25, it says basically that every seventh year that you just leave the land barren. Oh, I guess we're going there. Okay.
Well, I assumed you wanted it brought up.
Isaiah 61:2. Well, we can read it.
Isaiah 61 verse 2.
Yeah.
How about verse 2?
Yeah. It's so it basically said to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our Lord. I don't know. I might have gotten that scripture wrong. It doesn't matter. But what does matter, and I'll find the reference later. What it does matter that every 7 years that they were to leave the earth to let it rest for a year, right? And that makes an awful lot of sense because we know that when you plant a crop and all, it basically takes all the nutrients out of the ground. So that was probably their way of letting it rest and let it replenish itself with nutrients. And that makes perfect sense. But when it comes to the whole idea of every seven years that they also, what is it? They were forgiving debts, or was that? See, that's my confusion. Was that every 49 years, 7 times 7, that they forgave debts, and they also let the slaves go, or was that every 7 years?
Joe, I do not know. I'm calling. You can't see it, but I'm calling the year of Jubilee up and got questions. Maybe Barry knows that.
Okay.
Yeah, the year of Jubilee was the 50th year.
All right. So
Okay.
every 49 years, every 50 years was the
Yeah.
year of Jubilee, but every 7 years was just for the land, right? To let it rest.
Yeah, with ongoing things around that. But the whole idea, of course, of the 7 years ties in with the 7 days of creation. God, created 6 days, and the seventh day he rested, and then told
Right.
the people with their land, farm it for 6 years, and the seventh day let it rest. And they didn't understand crop rotation and things like our farmers do today, and the way we were able to fertilize and get more out of the soil than they could back in those days. So there's a lot of reasons for that. Also, make your animals live longer if you're not plowing all the time. Give them a break. And but as far as the Jubilee, I mean, that was so people wouldn't be indebted forever. And of course, there were rules where if you hired on someone as a servant, it depends on how many years was left until the year of Jubilee, how much that service would be worth. So you had to calculate that, because when the year of Jubilee comes, their debt is paid in full.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that went into that. But again, that was so you're not indebted forever.
So that would be every 50 years, though, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what the year of Jubilee was.
Jubilee was every 50 years. Okay, so just the land rested for a year. But then you freed all the slaves, right? And then from also what I understand is that the year of Jubilee, whether it is 50 years, and I think you're correcting me, which is good because I needed that understanding. So every 50 years, the land that was sold to individuals went back to their original owners.
Correct.
Does that makes sense to anybody? Because that's where I kind of scratch my little bald head and I'm saying, if I worked hard and I bought a piece of property from somebody and they benefited with the money, which they needed for whatever reason, and I got the land, which I am going to work on, whatever it is, either build a house or farm it or whatever. And all of a sudden at 50 years, and back then more so than today, things like land and ownership and homes and all that were handed down from generation to generation. All of a sudden, within a generation, maybe 2 generations removed or 1, you have to give the land back to its original owner. And that was a requirement, or was that something that was suggested? Because I can't imagine that really being something that sat well with even back then from a cultural perspective.
I am looking at what Got Questions has to say about the year of Jubilee.
Yeah.
I've heard of what you're talking about with the land going back after 50
Yeah.
years, but it's not in their write-up for some reason. They talk about release of indebtedness.
Yeah.
Well, here it is. All debts were forgiven and all property was returned to its original owners. Okay, so Joe, your question is a great one. Maybe Barry knows the answer. Why? He's like, I think you should be very strategic, evidently, about buying land.
Well,
like, don't buy it on year 49.
Well, first of all, you would buy it with the understanding that the year of Jubilee was coming. So how much you're going to pay or rent that land for, you understand whether you got 2 years or 40 years on that land.
Devalue it. Yeah.
And that would evaluate how much you're willing to put into it. Okay. Because this isn't suddenly a surprise. This going into the deal. The other thing is, remember back in their heritage, land was given to the 12 tribes. And they tried, they were very tribal as far as the areas that those tribes had. So when you gave away land, you had to make sure it eventually went back to where it was supposed to be, back to that tribe, back to those descendants of that tribe. So it just kept everything from getting too cluttered.
Yeah.
I like it, but God installed it, so it must be good.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. I just find that ownership is when you buy something and it's yours, that should at least stay in your family. But you could have gotten to the point where you're finally building something and then it's taken away from you because of something that I don't understand.
Well, I'll bet you people got very strategic about what they put their cash into, what they would buy. Yeah, I'm not gonna if next year's year 50, I'm not buying this property today, even if it is devalued. I can't do anything with it. I'll buy it 2 years from now. I'll buy it on year one.
Saying that it's like when you buy something, it's not that's year one. It's a matter that the year of Jubilee was marked on a calendar every 50 years. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good because I wasn't really sure how that worked. It's interesting. But anyway, I just wanted to bring it up because the whole year of Jubilee, I mean, it makes sense to let the land rest every 7 years. But that every 50 years, you basically have to give away everything that you worked for. That's the part that I just don't. Now, people didn't live as long as we do today. They didn't have big pharma like we have that keeps us artificially alive forever. But, if they did live, 50 plus years, they would have seen it in their lifetime that something that they owned within their family had to go back to its original owners. But I also studied up that apparently the year of Jubilee wasn't really something that was.
Joe?
No, I just there's something that certain things in the Bible just I question from my sense of righteousness, self-righteousness, and I have a hard time accepting it, even though it is something biblical.
Like I say, though, in the contract, you would have known up front how many years you get this land, and that would have helped determine how much you were willing to pay for it. So it was it isn't like it was a surprise. The other thing is that how interesting is how that gets lost in the Old Testament. We don't hear of the year of Jubilee in the New Testament.
No.
As close as we get to it is where Jesus tells the parable of leasing out the vineyard. In a certain time, he comes back to collect what is his. And of course, they kill the servants and the messengers. Sure. And he says, I'll send my son. But they kill him too and says, let's claim it for ourselves. So, I think part of that message is what we think is ours is not.
Mm-hmm.
We're just stewards of it. We're just tenants of it.
Good point.
I started digging a little bit deeper into the point where kind of getting away from the year of Jubilee, but looking at people's or culture. Apparently, the millennials of today, the younger generations, they're looking at something called Christian socialism as something that's fair. They're getting more and more away from capitalism as we understand it, which as we generate wealth from hard work and the result of our efforts and all that. from a Christian perspective, we are to be generous and be able to help others. And that's done from an individual's heart. Some give more than others and all that. But Christian socialism has come to, I used this word before, community, because of my study, is that there's almost an expectation that everything is shared. It's expected rather than something from the heart. And it is something that is gathering a little bit of traction, if you will. And I wholeheartedly disagree, because face it, I'm a capitalist. I think that you invest into working hard and you do everything that you can to get ahead. You should. That is something that with God's help, of course, it's all about the blessings and all that. When somebody then comes to you and they say, well, you have to give it away or part of it away, and it's demanded or expected, more of a socialist thing where everybody shares everything. I think it's horrible. But, a lot of the younger people are buying into this, that they feel that all the resources, and they look at the rich people, that they should share their wealth with others that have less. And I just feel that that's just not right.
It fails every time it's been tried. And
Socially.
the reason why it fails is because sooner or later people start noticing that if we all get the same, then I'm not going to work. And then somebody else has to work harder to provide for that schmo. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon there's anger and then there's death. I mean, it fails every time.
Yeah. They've had that challenge with East Germany when they combined both East and West after the Berlin Wall came down. They realized that the East Germans didn't know how to work. They had no ability to put in a good day's work and for a wage, because they just didn't have enough work, and they all kind of like shared what they had, and it seems like they were okay with it. And the West Germans, of course, saw this kind of attitude, and they we're paying these people for doing nothing, but they're okay with it. It became East Germany became a welfare state for West Germany, and
Margaret Thatcher said, sooner or later, problem of socialism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money.
Yeah. I remember you saying that. That's so true. Yeah. But anyway, let's get off the socialist kick. But the whole year of Jubilee, or that 49 or 50 years, the year of Jubilee is kind of not. I just don't understand it. I think if for the love of for a godly person gives out of their love, out of their abundance and love and care, out of their heart, not necessarily they should be made or forced to do something. And the fact that it's scriptural and biblical, the year of Jubilee, is kind of confusing to me, but maybe someday I'll ask Jesus about that face to face.
Barry?
Yeah. Before we go from there, Jim, can you pull up Acts 2:42 to the end of the chapter there?
Yep.
Acts 2, verses 42 through the end. This is more for the benefit that anybody might be watching. I'm sure you guys know what this story is about.
You want to read?
You want to share your screen?
Oh, no, I'm not going to. I want you to read it without me sharing the screen.
Well, I have my iPad in front of me. I can read it from there.
How about now?
Okay, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and all came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking of bread in their homes, they received their foods with gladness and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who are being saved. Clearly, they were selling lands and taking all their resources and bringing it together and meeting everyone's needs as the needs came up. The big difference between socialism and what this is talking about is, as Joe pointed out, this is voluntary. Socialism takes it and gives it to someone else.
Isn't the year,
Christianity says, "Give as the Lord lays upon your heart."
is the year of Jubilee voluntary? I don't think it is.
I don't see where the year of Jubilee comes into this section of Scripture.
I'm just saying, no. I'm just
Okay.
saying that I don't think any of those people, when it came to that point, that any of them gave it with their heart. They just accepted it as the law.
This was not something that continued on in the New Testament. I believe the context here is that they just watched Jesus ascend about 50 days ago. He said he's coming back. I don't need this stuff. This is a short-term strategy. Let's just share everything. They were expecting him back.
I see this as a good model for today's church. Those who have, as the Lord leads them to, they can help meet the needs of others who do not have.
Sure.
So we're saying that this is a short-term investment because they fully expected Jesus to come back within a very short period of time.
That's my position on this, Joe, because this does not carry. There's no evidence this carries through in the whole New Testament period.
Mm-hmm.
They just watched Jesus go. He says, "I'm coming back." I don't need this stuff. Jesus is coming back. He's going to set up the kingdom. That's what I think is going on here.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Mary's point is, if as long as it's voluntary, sure. And there are a lot of wealthy Christians who do give a lot of money away. They'll probably never give enough away to satisfy the demands of the young socialists that don't want to work and just want stuff.
Yeah. But I just found it very interesting that that's also within a Christian, it's a movement within the Christian faith, where it's defined as Christian socialism. And I was like, wow, talking about blending faith and culture together and making a mess.
Joe, the left in this country has taken over every institution, big medicine, big media, big oil, and also big EVA or evangelicals.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're splitting the church smack in half right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's move on because I'm depressed enough.
You're depressed?
Oh, this is sad.
Oh,
very sad.
Mr. Nob?
Sure. Jim, another scripture to pull up.
Oh, now you tell me. Just stop sharing my
Yeah.
screen.
Okay.
What do you want?
Hey, can you do King James for me?
Sure.
All
We went
right.
back in time 1,600 years.
I don't normally do King James, but let's do it here.
Where we going?
We're going to 1 Thessalonians 5:22.
Barry must have left us, Joe.
No, I'm here.
Oh, I don't see your Did you turn your camera off?
Oh, hold on a second.
There you're back. Great. Okay. You look better too.
Okay. So my question is, what do you guys think about Halloween?
I don't like it.
I got in a Facebook discussion with kind of like someone in the church, not a real friend of mine, but somebody I know for many years, that takes exception to anyone who even has anything to do with, Halloween per se and all that. And a friend of mine on Facebook said that he ran out of candy. There he had so many kids come by that he ran out of candy and he felt bad. So this gentleman jumped in and said, "Well, what are you doing celebrating Halloween in the first place? It's a, what is it? It's a holiday. It's a pagan holiday, and it worships the spirits, all the evil things." And I replied back. I said, "Well, we gave candy out too, and it's an opportunity for, not so much, I don't particularly like it, but Mercy does, to get to know the neighbor kids and the families, because they come around in families and get into discussions. And you don't really have to celebrate. You don't have to really celebrate Halloween. You could, you could celebrate it as the end of the harvest season, and thanking God for the bountiful crop or something, But the fact that kids go around trick or treating and you get to see them in their costumes and get to know them and all that, to me, it's an opportunity more than a sin. I think it's how you look at it, Barry. We don't wear evil costumes or do any seances or in any way encourage anyone to look at it from the dark side. We just enjoy it as an opportunity to, have time with neighbors and hand out candy. Really, that's all it is to us.
We actually have a divided household. Jackie hates Halloween. I'm fine with it for the purposes, Joe, you're describing.
Yeah.
But tomorrow night we will turn out our post lantern outside and close our doors and pretend we're not here. And the rules are, if your porch light's on, you're open for business, and if your porch light isn't on, don't bother these people.
Yeah, we have the same rule in our neighborhood, and we leave the porch light on. And Mercy, until she runs out of candy, she enjoys seeing the little kids with the costumes and talking to the folks. So
yeah,
that's what we make of it.
That's kind of where I'm at too. But I don't want to. I don't feel strongly about it. So Jackie does. So her opinion rules. Barry, you tell us what we should think about it.
No, I've known wonderful Christian people who have been both ends of this spectrum, where totally ignore it, and others say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Have some fun." Usually, I'm closer to one end than the other, but having been leadership in church, sometimes in our churches we have tried to Christianize Halloween. Okay, even to the point where we had different classrooms decorated up like a theme, like one room might be Noah's Ark, and something like that. Next room might be the Garden of Eden. And as the kids would come in, they'd sit down and get a 5-minute Bible study lesson. And then they get some candy. And then they go to the next room. And people would be dressed up in character. We wouldn't permit any scary costumes or anything like that. So we turn it into a Bible study time. So we Christianized it. A lot of churches these days do trunk or treat, where they park in their parking lots and you come by and you give the kids candy, and maybe with that candy you give them a Christian tract or something like that, where they can take that home, so you can turn it into an outreach event to minister to kids that may not come on Sunday. So I understand both ways of going with this. The reason I wanted this verse, it says, "Abstain from all appearance of evil." Who determines what the appearance is?
Mm-hmm. Well, Barry, I'm going to have a segue here, if I may. Segue.
Sure.
I know a man, he's part of our church, who his wife died a couple years ago, and he had a girlfriend who he wanted to marry. She didn't want to get married, but she wanted to live together. And the rules of the house were, we're not going to sleep together, there'll be no sex. And so he got counsel from a Christian counselor who said, that's okay, because you're not really fornicating, you're still maintaining your purity. And I said, you can't do this because of this verse. Who's going to believe you that you're not sleeping together?
Okay.
So what do you think?
Well, as Christians, certainly we have to be aware about what other people think when they look at us. Okay. That can't be the overwhelming ruler of our lives. Sometimes people won't understand what we do, even if it's God honoring. Okay. We can't live by the opinions of others, but we do need to understand that is part of our witness, how people perceive us.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of message, or and I'm not picking on Jackie, by the way, because I really don't have a strong opinion.
Oh, Joe, you can pick on her. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, she never watches these videos.
I won't tell her. It'll take me these 10 minutes to tell her. So go ahead.
So not her in particular, but just in general. But what message does it send if you just shut down your porch light and, nobody knows whether you're in there or not, it's kind of like, okay. But what I notice is that we are all seeking opportunities to connect with non-believers, in one way or another.
Mhm.
And I see that as an opportunity to do that, to be able to open a door and in candy or whatever, some it could be healthy snacks, as Mercy says. But the reality is that interaction with neighbors and all that might be the first time that you see those folks, and to me that means something, from a welcoming perspective.
I would file this one, Joe, underneath in a file drawer that is probably needs like 1,000,000 items in it. And I think the rule here is, what is the Lord leading you to do? So, and in this case, if you had asked Jackie, she's a pagan holiday, I don't celebrate it. And if he asked me, I'd say I'd probably do it, but out of respect for my wife, who feels strongly about it, more strongly than I do, I'm not going to celebrate it. But I'd say there's a verse that I'm struggling to pull up into my brain, but it's a Romans 14 principle, where not everything, like people in that case, people were eating meat offered to idols, and it offended some people. Go, oh, that was offered to an idol. Well, an idol is nothing. They don't even. It's a false god, meaning they don't even exist, and they wouldn't eat the meat because it's offered to a false god. But the Christian side of that is the stewardship. Man, this meat's half the price.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good stewardship. So I would file this that under that cabinet where, what's the Lord leading you to do?
Yeah. And if there's an opportunity for an outreach, that's all I'm saying. The actual holiday is very, it's a pagan holiday. It's actually satanic, more so than in all the other pagan holidays that we observe. And we can make an argument for Easter as well, being a pagan holiday, and even Christmas, if when you think about it, that we've commercialized it, and we there's more people worshiping Santa Claus than there is celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ these days. So the reality is that it's important for us to make it what we want to make it, as long as it doesn't in any way insult or disrespect God, and from perspective of handing out candy and talking to neighbors and being amused by outfits, to me that's okay. Now, on the other hand, and Mercy has noticed that later on, the older kids show up and they tend to have more demonic looking outfits and all that. And in a way, we're glad that we run out of candy before that time, because then we shut the porch light off. So there's a little bit of that.
The difference with Halloween, it does have a direct tie to the evil spirit world.
Yes.
And that is, although I just saw an advertisement last night for a new slasher movie around Thanksgiving.
Yes. I saw that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard on the news that America is now at the point where they sell as many adult Halloween costumes as they do kids' costumes.
I believe it.
So adults, they grew up with this and they don't want to leave it because that's a lot of fun. I mean, now they're doing adult parties, and we don't want to talk about what goes on in adult parties. But this is getting crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is, when we're talking about appearance of evil, we need, like I say, you can't let other people's opinion run your life, but we do need to be aware of it because it does affect our ministry. As a pastor of a smaller church, everybody knew my car. I don't know if you know your pastor's cars or what they look like, where you could spot them from a distance. Everybody knew my car. They knew what my car looked like. If they drove down the road and saw my car sitting at a bar, what do you think they would think?
They'd think Mary borrowed your car.
Okay. Yeah. Or maybe it's not a church member. Maybe they would know better, but maybe it's someone maybe occasionally visits your church or somebody you're trying to reach out to in your community, and they know your car and they see you at the bar. They don't know that maybe there's somebody in there that had too much to drink and called you and said, "Pastor, I can't drive. Would you come get me?"
Yep.
Yeah.
But we need to be aware of what that looks like. Or if a woman comes for counseling and I counsel her alone, okay, that could be perfectly innocent, but what does that look like?
Doesn't look good.
Yeah. So we need to be aware of those things. Like I said, it can't be the guiding principle, but it has to be part of the conversation. And when it comes to Halloween, I think I'm happy to see us find creative ways to Christianize this. And I don't like that term, but it's the best way I know to express it. And churches say, well, we're going to try to reach out to these kids, and maybe this is the only way we'll get a chance to impact their lives all year long. And maybe we do put a little Christian tract or a little paperback New Testament or something in the bag or something like that. Or maybe if nothing else, it gets them to our church building. So maybe next
Barry,
time
you just gave me a great idea, because I'm not against it, sitting out on the porch and handing out candy and all that, but I think I'm missing an opportunity. I just look at it as, and not that I do it a lot. Mercy's really the one that enjoys it more, but looking at it as an opportunity to just get to know neighbors and start a conversation, maybe even a connection, a friendship. But the whole idea of putting a like a cartoon, like a simple track in there for the kids, that's a great idea. I'm gonna have to research that a little bit.
Yeah, let me take it a step further, Joe. Why do we call the day Jesus was crucified Good Friday?
Our sin debt was paid.
What man did his worst and God did his best. God turned an awful thing that man did. I mean, I realize Jesus laid down his life and all that, but they crucified the King of Kings. But God turned it into something awesome. And perhaps that's a challenge for us to take these negative things in our lives and turn them into something good. Don't just boycott them, but turn them into something great.
Do you want to change it to Awesome Friday? Is that what you're saying?
No, it is Awesome Friday. It's Great Friday. It's not just good; it's great.
Okay.
All right. But let's take perhaps like a holiday like this, and let's turn it into an evangelism emphasis. Let's turn it into something about, Jim, and I confess, Mary and I are the same way. We turn off our porch light.
Mm-hmm.
And you pretend, we're not giving out candy. We're just not going to participate in that. But maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe we ought to say, look, this is an opportunity to reach some kids that we may never have an opportunity any other way.
I'll bet you it wouldn't take long to dig up a testimony of somebody who got saved reading a tract they got on Halloween.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the whole celebration of it's a good thing, but it does mean that God uses his word, and that's through many different people and venues.
I don't think there's a right or wrong on this one. I think we agree on that, right? There's no right or wrong. It's whatever, however you're led, from if you're against it, you're against it. If you're for it, but if you're for it, you really have to start figuring out how to build fences around it too, right? Because even Christians, sometimes they can go too far and they start, they get invited down the street because somebody's having a Halloween party, and they say, oh, we should go, shouldn't we, and all that. No, definitely you don't go, because we all know how those things lead down the wrong path, and they say, well, it'll be fun, and we know so and so. Nah. But when it comes to trick-or-treating, and sharing candy with children, and maybe have an opportunity to strike a conversation with the parents, and I really like the idea of putting a children's track, with the candy that we give out. I think it's definitely worthwhile.
Especially since you're pretty much decided you're going to do this anyway, pass out the candy. So you
I'm making it sound as if like I do this. I sometimes help Mercy, but she's the one that does it. And she's a very social individual and loves our neighborhood. So from her perspective, it's fun. And and it's also an opportunity to get to know the neighbors. With me, sometimes I get stuck. Like, for example, this was the School of the Bible. Thursday was our trick or treat night, so that was a little bit more challenging, because of that. But the reality is that it really depends on how you're led by the Spirit, and
Walk
that's
in the
it.
Spirit, and you won't fulfill the lust of the flesh.
Right.
You get this, and every Christian gets to decide. On like I say, we have a million of these debatable issues. What are you being led to do?
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting there's a right or wrong here. I agree. I think everybody needs to pray about this and do as the Lord leads. And if one person says, I'm good at being a part of this, and another says, no, I'm going to turn off my light, that's fine too.
Actually, through this discussion, I'm more motivated to do it because now I have a purpose, because I'm not as social as Mercy is to strike conversations and all that, but I might, look at that. This is an opportunity to sneak a track in there. So, and if anybody, like Jim was saying, if anybody gets saved from it, wow,
Yeah.
to God be the glory,
I would bet my life, Joe, that happens.
Yeah,
I bet my life that it happens.
sure, absolutely.
Gentlemen, it's I'm not going to say it's witching hour. That would be inappropriate tonight. But it is 8:03. So anything for the good of the order? Joe, we will think about the fourth person. And I will commit myself to think about it and pray about it. And we'll talk about it next week again.
Yeah, I don't have anybody in mind, by the way. I just brought that up, but I think it would be good to have a fourth in the rotation so that we can be more consistent if one of us is out.
Okay. And I'm sure it could be a good thing. All right, guys. God bless you. Good night.
Take care.
Have a good week, guys.